Hello everybody. Welcome to online painting. Here we go again. We gotta have the intro music because it makes us look professional. Okay, enough of that. Now we'll put the intro music away, and today we're going to talk about mixing flesh tones. When you consider mixing flesh tones, there's no one formula because each of us is unique, although there are some basic guidelines that actually pertain to the darkest ethnicity to the lightest. It's really all skin. A principle, a thing to consider when you are going to be mixing a tone is what is the essence of the person who you're looking at. And what I mean by that is, does their flesh tend towards a rosy sort of a feel, or are they olive complected? Now, if I'm in a group of people talking about this, I can go around and kind of say olive, rose, rose, rose. I'm pretty olive myself. Now, this distinction, there's so many distinctions between us naturally, but whether one tends towards an olive or a yellow ochre sort of complexion, or whether they tend towards the rosy or even a violet side, that is unique with that's universal, whether it's the darkest flesh tone to the lightest flesh tone. So what we're going to do today is I think we'll begin by mixing a dark tone, and then I'll go to a light. On my palette, I have all of our basic colors laid out in a way that's easy for me to get to them. I also have, this is not necessary but helpful, 2 palette knives, because as I get going on this, I might want to add a light color quickly without wanting to clean my knife. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, shall we? I'm going to start by taking some yellow ochre, a nice big sploof of it. Oh, I don't want to get it all, but anyway. Okay, here's my yellow ochre going onto the palette. Now to this, I'm going to go ahead and add just a small bit of red. Now the red in the open acrylic set that we use in class is very concentrated. This might be too much. Okay. Yep. Too much. See? And did you see how little it was? So more yellow ochre. Just like in cooking, you just keep adding till it's just right. And I still have quite a bit of the red in there, but I think it's going to be fine. Now I'm going to add ultramarine blue. One of the interesting things about flesh tones is that it's basically a mix of the primary colors. But if you do bright yellow, bright blue, and bright red, it's pretty hard to control. So I'm going to dip into my ultramarine blue. Again, I'm going to use that principle of sneaking up on it. And this is going to bring in that element of green, which is too much. Now what I have not added, no white, because I'm starting with the darker tone. Now, one of the things I probably am going to add here, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more blue, but that's going to make it go away green. So I think what I'm going to do, I'll add blue, oops, drop some paint. I'll add some red, and let's just see what we come up with, okay? We'll just see. That's actually a very lovely color. Righto. Okay, so I think it needs just a touch more red, but I'll put that only on one side because we're going to want to have many variations within the flesh tone. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add brown to one side. I'm going to use the burnt umber because that's what most people have that are in our college class. Now raw umber is just like burnt umber, but it's what we would say cooler. So it's not so red. And that can be a good thing to use also. But I'll go ahead and put some brown over here. It doesn't look too different. I think actually, you know what I'm going to add to this? Some ultramarine violet. You can mix a purple if you don't have it, but that can be a great thing to add to darker flesh tones. Yes, and now it's coming together quite well. Alrighty. Oops, that's a lot, but I think it's going to work. Okay, so let's see what we have. You know, one more thing I do want to add here in this is I'm going to put make a side that's just got a lot of blue in it for a nice dark. Now, what would you do if you wanted to lighten this up? What I would recommend would be, if you have a Naples yellow, you can use that. You can also use white, but I don't really recommend it if you can help it. If it's when we talk about flesh tones, there's different aspects of it. There's the local color. Like if you were to do a Photoshop dot of my arm, it would be a color. But then as you see on my face here in this light, there's all different colors. And there's greens and reds and blues. Maybe you think it's crazy if I say that I see this in the flesh tones, but they're there. Now you can bring those out to whatever degree you like. I'm just like cooking up a storm here. So I've made one side that's got a lot of blue and red in it. I've got another side that's got a lot of brown in it. And here we go. I don't know if you can see that. You see? That's my flesh tones. Now I'm going to go ahead and see what it looks like on the canvas that we have here. All right, we'll start with our universal. That's pretty good. Pretty happy with that. No brown was in that one whatsoever. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and put the one next to it that had the brown added. Golly, you really can't tell the difference, can you? Not much. And then we'll go ahead and bring in our purple. Oh, that's the prettiest of all. Look at that one. Doesn't that? Oh, I don't want it to reflect. That's a very nice tone. Especially, you could use that for the darks. And then, in fact, let's just go ahead and do that, shall we? This is not planned, so we'll see what we come up with. So, how could I do a face out of this? I think we can do it. I'm just going to proceed as if we can, okay? So we're going to go ahead and paint quickly, and we'll turn this into a face. I have to put my eyes in here. Okay, might not be a masterpiece, but it will be a workable. What I want to show you is how do you shade with the flesh tones, okay? Working fast here. This is all pretty much, generally I don't like to paint it all like a local color. So let's go ahead and bring in some ochre up here. In other words, you want to mix your paint as you go, rather than painting the whole thing one color and say, oh, I'll just add the shading later. If you do that, I'm adding Naples yellow, by the way. If you do that, then you're going to end up in trouble because it's really so much easier to mix the paints when the paint is wet. Okay, this has gone a little bit sort of I think it wants to have a little bit more of a bluish color in here. But you know, I'm just going to gesture this in. I'm going to grab another brush, which I thought I had. I'll use this one, and we'll just keep going. Okay. Let's see. Oh, this is my nice dark here. I'm just going to paint this. I think this figure probably needs some eyes in order to be a living and breathing human being, so let's go ahead and go for that. But first, I'm going to finish with bringing this together here. Wow, there it is. Totally spontaneous art happening. The cool thing is I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to look, but that's part of the fun, isn't it? And then we'll go into lighter flesh tones here in just a moment. All right, my little guy's coming together slightly. I just want to cover the face, and then we'll give him some semblance of eyes. I think it's a him. Doesn't it look like him? Oh, he needs a neck, as I say. Give him a neck. Give him some kind of things around his mouth here. He doesn't really have a mouth yet, but he will. We'll get that in. Okay, well, that's the shadow under the mouth. No mouth. Oh, I have to do it so you can see it. All right, so let me come in with a little bit of I have to look at it myself. It can get really funny when I do it sideways. Oh boy. Okay, there's our dude. Now we're going to go ahead and give him an eye. This is I better to leave that eye out. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add some shading here and some highlights. And to do that, I want to bring some blue into it. There we go. And now come down here. Now we can start to really build this figure. Okay. There we go. Notice how big this brush I'm using is. Now this is really, I'm just kind of playing. I'm just trying to show you how you can just paint really in the moment and come up with something. And while this is speedier than I do usually paint naturally, it's also how I paint. That would be blending on the canvas itself rather than mixing separately. You want to blend right on the canvas. You don't want to generally, now there's exceptions to that, there's exceptions to everything, but anyway, there's my dude. Boy, that's a funny looking thing, isn't it? So now we've kind of gotten off on that tangent. Let's go on. I'm going to go ahead and lighten up the flesh tones. So we have our yellow ochre. Generally, if I'm mixing a lighter tone, I'll start with my yellow ochre. And I'll go ahead and add some white. Not a lot of white, but just a little bit. Here we have this. Now I could also take white and maybe a yellow ochre Naples. I could add it to this whole dark pile I have here, but I'm not. I'm going to start over. I do have a little bit of the darker on my palette knife, and I think that's pretty okay. Not too much red. Add a little bit. There we go. That looks pretty good. And now just a touch of blue, which will bring us to the green that we like. That's not very much blue. Let's see. Ooh, that's a little too much blue. Sure, see how it's gotten all gray? That's a good shadow color for doing flesh tones, but it's not the prime, not really what I want. So I'm going to go back with a little bit more yellow ochre, add a little bit more red, and that's pretty good. Okay, let's see what this looks like on the canvas, shall we? Let's see. Oh, that's actually, I have a little red in the brush, but that's okay because I think it's helpful. You see, that's a pretty decent little flesh tone right there. Now let me go ahead and get more paint. I had some water in my brush. And just to very briefly show you pretty much what I was showing you previously, you can come in here. Let's go ahead and, what are we going to do? We're going to bring him in like this. And you model the face using the darker tones, all right? Now, unlike what we see with the darker tones, here you can come in with a white. So I want to do a highlight up the nose, over the top. You can do, I've got some funny thing happening with my brush here. Let's see, we'll come in here. There we go. And etc. You just keep playing with it. My dark tones. I'm gonna come back in with my lights. And carry on. I don't think I'm gonna make another scary, crazy, funny dude because one is quite plenty. All right, so that's our mixing of flesh tones lesson for today. And as we say, thanks for listening.